You say that the way businesses are discovered has fundamentally changed, right? What is happening right now with AI search? I talked about the answer search engine. Most entrepreneurs and investors really are underestimating. There's this whole initially people were like, oh no, they're like they think about data centers and they think about it's listening, or they think about it's going to, be Hal and take over the world and all that kind of stuff. And then there's the other of us that are quietly out there gaining the skills that we need to be able to dominate our space, right? Hello, welcome back to the Compassionate Capitalist Show. Today's episode is one of those conversations that every entrepreneur and investor needs to hear because it challenges a belief that most people don't even realize is outdated. Most founders think if I build a great company, the market will find me. But what if that's no longer true? What if today, as you sit here listening, building your business, seeking to sell your business, or as an investor, you are trying to understand the valuation of the company you are about to invest in and look beyond the traditional assets and eyeballs in determining a future valuation? If AI can't find you, investors can't find you either. Because in a world where tools like Chat GPT and AI search engines are recommending businesses, visibility is no longer just marketing, it's a valuation driver. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. My guest, Jimi Gibson, he is the VP of Brand Communications at Thrive Internet Marketing Agency, a firm with over 20 years of experience helping more than 1,000 companies grow through digital discovery. He's a TEDx speaker, a Forbes contributor, and one of the leading voices on how AI is changing search from SEO to what's now being called the answer engine optimization. But more importantly, for this audience, he's going to help us understand how visibility impacts your ability to raise capital, your ability to scale, and ultimately your ability to exit at a higher valuation. And for the investors, you care about all of that because you want to maximize your return on an investment. So you want to know that the company has the ability to raise the capital, that they have the ability to attract customers so they can scale. And ultimately, they have the ability to exit, to be found by the private equity funds, by the corporations that buy companies for their thought leadership to become part of their ecosystem, by the hedge funds, and by strategic acquirers. You want to know that today and tomorrow your investment in a startup or a early stage private company is going to be uh you know less risky and more rewarding. So with that, Jimi, welcome to the Compassionate Capitalist Show. Excited to have you here today.
Karen, I'm excited. You have such an enthusiasm for this topic, and I know you've done a lot of work on your own, and I think we're going to have a rich conversation.
Yes, we shall. Yes, we shall. So let's start here. You say that the way businesses are discovered has fundamentally changed, right? What is happening right now with AI search? I talked about the answer search engine. That most entrepreneurs and investors really are underestimating. There's this whole like what initially people were like, oh no, they're like they think about data centers and they think about it's listening, or they think about it's gonna be Hal and take over the world and all that kind of stuff. And then there's the other of us that are quietly out there gaining the skills that we need to be able to dominate our space, right? And I'm going through this right now and my head seems to constantly be buzzing because the human intelligence factor of using artificial intelligence is no joke. It's no toy, right? You got to be able to think through so you can make AI do what you want it to do. So there's like just so much of this. So Why is it changing? So let's just, and I kind of got a little ahead of myself there. It is back to the question. Like, why is it that the way people are found on the internet, businesses are found on the internet, are changing, and it's being underestimated, or people, organizations aren't even aware that that could be why they're losing traffic to their website or to their solutions?
Yeah. So that's a loaded question, and we're going to talk a little bit high level, and then I'm going to let you guide me as to how technical you want to get. And so
Sure.
I love analogies and metaphors and all those types of things. And so if we go back to the traditional ways of SEO or search engine optimization that has been around for 20, 25 years, we've seen just about every change in the algorithm updates. And, there were all sorts of ways of gaming the system and keyword stuffing and purchasing backlinks and all that type of thing. But in the end, the goal of SEO or search engine optimization is kind of in the name, right? So you search for something, and then Google, who is the majority player in that space, wanted to give you the best result. And so they displayed those results on page one. And it used to be that you would click through till page 15, but the behavior changed along the way. And if you didn't get what you wanted on page one, then you just kind of reconfigured your search till you got what you wanted on page one. You ended up with 10 blue links. And then you just decided, okay, maybe I recognize number three. I'm going to click on number three. And so that was really to optimize a page on your website. And so you wanted to optimize for the keyword phrasing that you thought was going to return that
Hmm.
page. You made sure there were backlinks to that page. And often it was about the number of backlinks instead of the quality of the backlinks. And, there were probably about 230 different pieces of that algorithm that determined who got those 10 spots and who got the number one spot, and so forth and so on. So what's happened, and if you just rewind the clock a couple of years, that ChatGPT was sort of the first big one on the scene, and they're probably the one with the biggest user base. Um, it became very interactive, and it sort of felt like it had a personality, and you could go back and forth and ask it questions, and
Yeah.
there was all this engagement with this tool. And so people got used to using that tool. And so if you searched in Google, typically the search would be about 5 or 6 words. If you're communicating with ChatGPT, often your first interaction with it is on average 32 words. And yeah, the
Oh.
structure of it is more conversational. And so you use the term answer engine optimization. Well, what has to happen before you get an answer? You ask a question. And so everything started to shift into this question and answer scenario. Well, if we fast forward to, even as soon as last year, 60, now this is important for everyone to understand. When you go do a traditional Google search, 60% of those searches end without anybody clicking to a website. 60%. And you go, what? Why is that? Well, it's because if you look at the page of Google now, there's a variety of things going on. I mean, there's still some paid spots. There is AI mode through Google. There is maybe a knowledge panel, which is more of an educational snapshot of the company or the business or the topic or whatever that is. And there are AI overviews. And so there's a lot of stuff going on that page that potentially can answer the question that you've asked. And so that's one component. The next component is the pie. Let's talk about pizza. That's a good analogy to use. The pizza is getting divided up into more slices, right? So you can go to AI mode and search in Gemini. You can go to traditional Google search. You can go to ChatGPT. You can go to Perplexity. You can go to Claude. You can go to Grok. You can go to Copilot. Everybody sort of has their favorite, but the search activity is getting divided up in all these different places. And so, yeah, you mentioned in my intro that we work with 1,000 companies. They're knocking on our door, proverbially saying, what happened to all my traffic? Well, that's what happened to all your traffic. Now, you could take that as a doomsday, my business is folding up, I don't know what to do, how am I going to survive this? Or you can take that as an optimistic, okay, what can I do about that? And so there's a couple of things, and I'll stop because I know you want to dig in onto some specifics there. And I'm going to use some tools that maybe people are not familiar with. I would encourage you to go try some of these tools. I would say all of them have a free option that you can just kind of learn what the particulars are about each one. Claude is getting a lot of press right now. It's an amazing tool. If you're working in ChatGPT and you are trying to figure out, and let's just use a typical home service, how do I, when do I call a plumber, or what is a situation that I might be able to fix on my own if I have a clogged drain? Okay, so I said about 32 words. That's probably not 32, but that's probably about 20 words. And it's going to start to talk you through. Are you having this problem at home? Is that problem at the office? Da, 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 da. And at some point, you're going to end up either with an answer if you feel like you want to fix that yourself, or it's going to recommend some people in the local area that could potentially help you. The problem is right now, ChatGPT doesn't often give you a link to that company's website. They could still show up, but you can't click through. So the behavior at this point is to leave ChatGPT, go back over to Google, and do a search. Now, I would say, things are moving pretty fast. If you're listening to this at the end of 2026, this might be a different story, right?
Yeah.
And so if you search in Google for the company that you believe is the best, because that's what ChatGPT told you, then that's coming into your Google Analytics or your traffic attribution as a branded search or a direct, but it's actually a referral from ChatGPT.
Oh, sure.
Now, the good news is that a typical conversion through Google is about 1.7 ish. So for every 100 visitors that come to your website, only less than 2 are going to do what you want them to do, whether that's call you or fill out a form or whatever the case may be. But whatever your conversion rate is from that referral from ChatGPT is going to convert at 4.5 times what a traditional Google search is. So you're getting better traffic. You're getting people who have already decided that you're the one. How can I pay? Where do I go to schedule an appointment? And so it's actually a better experience because they've already done their research and they're more predisposed to go through that conversion. So it actually can impact your revenue. So you can actually have decreased traffic, but maintain your revenue. So that's one thing that you want to make sure. So whoever's working on your website, get them to pull an analytics report year over year from 2025 to now and see what's going on. That would be the first thing. And then the other thing is there are certain things that you can do that will put you ahead of your competitors because, as you said, most people are not paying attention to this. They don't know what's going on. They don't know how to fix it. And just a little bit of effort, we have this window of opportunity where you can do some things and actually get some pretty quick results. It used to be that search engine optimization would take about 6 to 8 months to kind of
Yeah.
work through the system and make sure everything was being crawlable. You can see results in 30, 60, 90 days with optimization for these answer engines. So happy to go a little bit deeper. And I know we're going to branch off into some other areas, but does that help put it in context a little bit?
Oh, sure. So let me see. Let me recap one key point there.
Okay.
So, whatever tool, large language model tool people might be using,
Yes.
and sometimes it'll give the sources of stuff, but when you're like, if I ask it, like, give me the sources because I'm doing research, let's say.
Right.
But in the case of what you just described, it's in its closed system because it's one that you're using versus sort of one you talk to like Alexis, right? Or something, or Gemini or something that you might talk to that is sort of like a just an audio version of a Google search because you're talking to it with your question of this is what I'm looking for kind of a
Right.
thing, right?
Sure.
So the closed language model ones, like a chat GPT, may not present the local businesses web links. It just found them because of an address, plumber, that kind of a thing, right? Because it's not giving you the link.
Well, we
And
can
so
talk
then
about all
so
the
it becomes
places.
like a branded, well, I just say, so then when you search it, you get a higher ranking, if you will, within the traditional Google search because more people ask specifically for that business versus where's a plumber near me? Is that, am I
Right.
following that right?
Yeah. So we'll talk about the places where these large language models look for information. So that's one component of it. So you want to make sure that you're part of that visibility so the chat GPT can find you. Okay. So that's one
Well, let's go
element.
ahead and like you did. We were going to talk about the study later. Let's, we can pivot into what investors and stuff like that. But I think it's for the listeners. We're dangling this, so let go ahead and talk about what you discovered in your deep research and sort of the effective outcomes of that, your own personal experience, and within that, that will lead people to some aha moments of things that they need to do. And hopefully it'll be apparent why, based on the intro, why this is important strategically for a company to grow. Because the original premise of this talk when we were first talking was how to maximize the valuation of your company when you're getting
Right.
ready to sell it,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
But we're kind of getting into being able to even get to a point of selling and existing as a business 3 years from now. So
Yeah.
yeah, so go ahead and talk about that deep research, what you discovered, because I think it's as we're entering challenging times, and the survival of the fittest in business is real. And this could very well be the element or the aspect that those listening to this show will know what they have to do to potentially be the last business standing 3 years from now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, a couple of prerequisites, Karen, and I know you're very enthusiastic, and I'm going to give you full permission to interrupt and jump in and go, "What did you just say?" or
Okay.
any of that, because I need to give a little bit of background before we start to dig in. And I love how you ask very specific questions and you know your audience like the back of your hand. And so this is awesome. Um, so, you introduced and said we have been around for 20 years. um, we started to see the writing on the wall that AI loves people because it can contextualize people as opposed to businesses. Now, businesses are made up of people, and certainly there are indicators that a company exists, right? So if you have an address, brick and mortar, you have a mailing address, you have assets out there that talk about the business, you have business registration, but the richer conversation is around people. And so if folks can just remember that. And that's actually your best competitive advantage, not only for how you decide to invest, but also your exit strategy on how you get the highest valuation for your business. So the owner came to me and said, "We're seeing the writing on the wall. We've been around for 20 years. We've never told our story about all the lessons that we've learned. I think we have some valuable information to share. I would like for you to be the face of the company." And so at one point I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. And then on the other hand, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not the owner. How am I going to speak like the owner? What am I going to do? Where am I going to go? And so I went through about a year of trying a lot of different things. And there was a lot of information out there, early stages, about where these large language models were picking up information from. And so I'll just give a short list of things that I did, and then we can talk about, because I know people are listening to this going, I cannot produce more content that I'm producing now. I'm not going to be an influencer. I have a business to run, all these kind of things. And so
Yeah.
basically, we're going to give you the cheat sheet to say, eh, you got to do something. And if you want to do something, you want to make sure you have the best return on that effort. So Here's what we're going to tell you.
Yay.
Also, with the qualifier that things can shift, but I'm going to give you some basic architectural and structural things that should not change no matter how the algorithm shifts or what the properties are where you're going to be producing. So I'll put that disclaimer in. So I wrote articles. I wrote on Forbes. I wrote on Entrepreneur. I wrote about a 3,000 word blog on our company website. I paired that with about a 15-minute video on YouTube. I sliced and diced that video, and that showed up on Instagram. That showed up as YouTube Shorts. That showed up on TikTok. Did a bunch of podcast interviews. Those podcast interviews have transcripts on YouTube. They have indicators as to where those podcasts are, whether it be on Spotify or Apple, iTunes shows. I served on board of directors. I joined associations appropriate to our industries that we serve. I showed up at conferences. I spoke on stages. And so that was a lot of stuff. And I was like, wow, what am I going to do the next year to understand where the best places to be? And so about the third quarter of last year, 2025, I started to gather all the data and look at all the information and started to plan for what I was going to do this year. But then I was also curious as to what is the state of business owners today in this world that, we're all living in. And so I gathered some data on 400 businesses across 5 different industries.
Okay.
And I wanted to know, and so you might think, well, why didn't you study 10,000? Well, statistically relevant tips out at 95% statistically relevant at 400 businesses with the types of businesses that I was looking at. I looked at small businesses with about 7.5 million average revenue, and then some medium ones was 23.9 million in revenue. I looked at basically the West, the Northeast, the Southeast, the Midwest, and sort of spread that around so that there was no skewing of the data. I made sure that the data was accurate. And I wanted to know who was visible and who wasn't visible. And so there's a little bit of slicing of the data to understand there's 2 different components to visibility. The first component is the business. And so you mentioned earlier, a plumber near me. And so typically if you type that in, you're going to get the business. If you say, who is the expert in residential plumbing, that skews a little bit to the person who's the owner of that business, who is the expert who's been around or demonstrates that they have that expertise. And so I wanted to know, is there a difference between those two? Well, 46% of the business owners were invisible. And you might go, okay, that's fine. The business will carry the weight. Here's the difference. Of the businesses where the business owner and the business, and when I say owner, I'm going to be a little bit fluid. It could be the CEO, it could be the founder, it could be an executive, it could be a subject matter expert. I'm not the founder, I'm not the owner, I'm a subject matter expert, right? I am on the executive team. When both of those showed up, traffic to the website increased. When both were invisible, year over year, traffic to the website dropped 28%. And so you go, wow, that's kind of crazy. Now, what's happening is, as we talked about earlier, 60% of searches end in 0 click for a traditional Google search. Gartner has predicted that over the course of this year, organic traffic will drop 25% to websites across the board. By 2028, that traffic will drop 50%. So whatever drop you're seeing now is only going to get worse. I'm saying in the study that I did, traffic from 2025, January of 2025 to January of 2026, the companies that were invisible as a company and an owner, their traffic dropped 28%. And so the companies, the businesses where the company was visible also dropped. The only sector where the traffic increased was where the significant person in the organization and the company were visible. Now, there have been many studies. I'll mention a few. Search Engine Journal did a study back in November. They said if an executive or some important person identifiable with the company post on LinkedIn 10 times a year, not a month, a year, their referral business will increase 30% and the deal size will increase 3.7 times.
So 10 a year is better than 10 a month?
No, I'm saying that's the minimum.
Oh.
Now, when we talk about places to show up, you probably all heard about Reddit. You might investigate Reddit, engage in some conversations there, encourage your best customers to engage in conversations on Reddit. LinkedIn just became number 2. Why? Because they can figure out who a person is, what business they belong to, what are their credentials, and it's a very verifiable source. So these large language models, as well as Google, are looking for 4 things. They're looking for experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. And LinkedIn is a great place to find that. Now, the interesting thing is LinkedIn has 2 billion members. Only
Yeah.
2% post. 2%.
Really? Well, I guess
Not,
out of 2 billion, I guess I'm following all the ones that post.
yep. 90% never even comment. They just lurk. So when I tell you that the bar is extremely low, it's extremely low. The other thing that is coming back into fashion is articles on LinkedIn are now more popular because they stick around longer.
Yeah. So articles still now are articles or are they newsletters
Not
or are they
newsletters.
long
I mean,
form
newsletters are
posts?
good if they're publicly available and they're posted on the platform, but so you can post and that,
I'm talking about within the LinkedIn context, right?
yeah,
When you talk about articles, because they do have a section for articles.
yep, that's the part I'm talking about. Now, posts
Okay.
will still come up, but their lifespan is a little less than an article.
Okay.
So an article, the sweet spot is about 1,500 words, 2,000 words. I know that sounds like a lot, and we can talk about how not to turn over the writing of that to ChatGPT because it's going to end up being generic. YouTube is also a very popular place. And so if you've never had a YouTube channel, these large language models are scraping the transcripts from a YouTube channel. So,
And
again, it might
transcripts
sound,
being real transcripts, not just show notes.
well, there's a description and then the transcript of actually what you and I are talking about. It will transcribe that and you can look at what the transcript is. And so that's kind of behind the scenes a little bit if you don't know where to click.
Oh, so when you upload your video or you live stream directly to YouTube,
Yep.
YouTube's creating the transcript.
They are. Or if you are recording something from a teleprompter or whatever, you can actually upload it so it doesn't mess up any words, depending on what you say and how you say it and how thick your Southern accent is. It may mess up a couple of words here and there. So those would be places that you have total control over.
So for YouTube, because one of the things like I think I was talking about earlier, when they first came out with handles, I grabbed angel investing,
Yeah.
right? A few years ago, whenever they first did that. And I have been putting content. I used to live stream directly, put it on YouTube automatically before
That's
I
awesome.
switched to Spotify.
Yeah.
But because their algorithms are so bad, I never could get figured out how to get found. I would be like, "Oh, it's entertainment. Oh, it's education. Oh, it's a blog. Oh, it's this." And I think that and it messed up the algorithms. So the algorithm does not know how to position me, right, in order to present me to somebody that's showing an interest in business topics and investing, right? So I don't. I already kind of knew that, like
Yeah.
you within the YouTube world, when it says, "Oh, you should watch this next," kind of a thing. But what it sounds like what you're talking about is similar in that LinkedIn as a platform that the AI search engines or they can find these articles as a public piece, and if you I don't know if there's settings to make yourself more public within LinkedIn, but that's the same way with YouTube because the transcripts are available. It outside of YouTube, it will find you to deliver your expertise to somebody having a conversation with their their AI tool.
Right. And so the way that it does that, it looks for a couple of things. It looks for clarity. How well do you communicate your expertise, right? Um, Coherence. How consistent are you at what you say? Don't talk about 100 different things. Pick 4 or 5 things and talk about them in a variety of places. Don't say exactly the same thing. Look at it from different angles. And so when these large language models go out, they are looking at all the places that it can say, Karen is this person. Here she is on LinkedIn. This is the description of what she says she is. Oh, look, she has a podcast. Here's what the catalog of podcasts that she's done. Oh, look, she was interviewed by this uh, publication, and they are giving her the thumbs up as this expert. And so it pulls all this together and it's saying, I understand who Karen is. There's coherence around who she is and what she talks about and what her expertise is. And then they're also looking for consistency. AI loves, loves, loves recent stuff. So it's not a set it and forget it. You can't just do it once. And so I'm going to go back to the pizza analogy. So each one of these large language models has training data, and they basically take a snapshot of the internet at some particular moment in time in the past. And they will update that depending on that tool every 3 months, every 6 months, whatever that is. Now, you do want to be included in that training data, but it's not vital. So let's just call that training data the pizza dough. And so the pizza dough is sitting on the counter, and maybe that pizza dough has been in the refrigerator and it's 3 to 6 months old. And you didn't make the cut for that snapshot of the internet during that training data. Well, that's okay because we still have to put toppings on that pizza. There's cheese and there's pepperoni and there's onions and there's green peppers and there's mushrooms and anchovies. And so you have all these choices on the pizza toppings. You don't have to load up that pizza with everything. You just have to be in a variety of places consistently. And so if you choose LinkedIn, if you choose YouTube, if you choose to contact your local radio station or TV station or newspaper and say, hey, I'm an expert. Maybe y'all could do a feature on me. Join your local chamber of commerce. Have a profile done about you on your local chamber of commerce. It loves third-party validation or third-party pizza toppings. Anybody can go to their own website and write an article that says, I'm the best person in this industry. And these large language models know that. They would prefer that somebody else give you the thumbs up. Maybe you know somebody who has a podcast, get interviewed on a podcast. And that's basically giving these large language models the pizza topping to say, yes, we're going to sprinkle those pizza toppings on this pizza. And I would say that is the way you want to approach it. There is a platform out there called Medium, just like it sounds, Medium. It's basically a blogging platform, but you can write an article for free. I think you can post 2 articles within 24 hours, 48 hours, something like that on a free plan. Medium is a highly scraped platform. So let's say you write a blog on your website, reconfigure that blog, put it on Medium, talking about that same topic from a different angle. Write an article on LinkedIn talking about that same topic from a third angle. And now all of a sudden, you're not doing a tremendous amount of work, but you're kind of sprinkling these pizza toppings all over the internet that has coherence around your area of expertise. Is this making sense?
Oh yeah, yeah, it is making sense. And it's and let me because we talk about person and company, right? So let me put it in the context of one of the things that we do when I'm working with a company and I'm raising capital
Yeah,
for them, right? And it sort of fit, it's sort of like I knew the strategy, but I didn't know how to do it in the way that it sounds like it's actually more efficient now with the way that AI looks for stuff than how it might have been in the past. And that is be like, okay, you're raising large amounts of money using one of my favorite methods, Reg A plus, right? For existing companies, not really startups, but for companies that are, have that plateau. They raise an angel round.
yeah,
So for the investors listening out there, for the companies listening out there, because there's a lot of companies in this particular situation where they raised a couple $1 million, expected for whatever reason, they had a Pollyanna attitude. They were expecting to become $100 million company without raising any more capital, or they thought they're going to get to $10 million in revenue, and then they would be in a short period of time, and people would be knocking on their doors to try to give them more money to grow. And in reality, they used up that money and were forced to start growing organically with their revenue. And they want to bring out new products. They want to get ready to sell the company, whatever. They need to raise capital to do what they need to do to get back on the growth curve that they
sure.
originally forecasted, their life cycle curve. I'm actually in the middle of writing a book about this called
Oh,
Scale.
nice.
Anyway, so what I would tell people what they have to budget for is, yes, you've got to do your social media marketing. You got to get all your stuff together. You got to have lawyers, accountants, blah, 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 all that other kind of stuff. You got to have a marketing strategy. But one thing that we do that you need to do, because you as a CEO must be considered an expert in the field. And the best way to become an expert in the field, or paid expertise, if you will, is like we had a partner that would do a one of the they don't even talk about them anymore, but they are the avatorial. So it's like an article written in the Financial Times, but it's paid space. And you would advertise that you're have an offering, which is in their like sidebar. Then we would get this article that's written third party talking about you, your product, your expertise, how it's solving the things in this industry, stuff like that, right? And it gets positioned next to your what they call a tombstone, for that you're raising 10 million, $15 million, and here's the stuff which you can do when you're doing this through a public general solicitation. And we would go and get a recording done as if you're being interviewed by a news agency. That would be basically an advertisement that looks like it on YouTube, and would be inserted in the streams, and using digital crumbs of how people will they like to invest in this, or they're in this sector, or they've been searching on terms for public stocks about whatever your industry is. And then your interview that looks like the Bloomberg they're getting ready to watch would be inserted in, so they don't know that it's an ad, because it looks like it's an interview. And so that's YouTube, right? It's an article in a respected publication that most people don't know, that down on the very bottom it says avatorial, right? They don't know it because it's written like an article. And then that you would turn that same content into what you talked about, blog, LinkedIn, other kind of stuff, right? So that's been, but that rich content is now fodder, really great fodder for this answer engine type of economy that we're entering into, and for to get on the radar screen of private investors as well as acquirers.
Yeah. And I would say there's a little bit of nuance in there. These large language models are pretty smart and they understand if it's pay to play, but not that it's not valuable, but if you can get the original content and then repurpose that content, I think that's the direction you were going. It looks professional. Again, it doesn't have to look professional. When you're posting on LinkedIn, it doesn't care whether anybody likes it, shares it, comments on it. If you're posting on YouTube and you start a YouTube channel and you literally have 0 subscribers, it's still going to scrape those transcripts because that entity exists. And so I don't want people to misinterpret um, being an influencer and going after vanity metrics. That's not the point. Um, the footprint and the expertise that's demonstrated. And so one of the things that you said when you're preparing for one of these advertorials is you've got to dig down and you got to figure out, okay, what am I expert at? How am I going to say it? Going through that process will help you understand how to say it when you get a real interview, when you go to write some additional copy. So I think all of those are great points.
Yeah, well, I think, I mean, I get what you're saying. It's smart enough to know that if it's a pay to play thing, but I think really probably more relevant was the strategy of
Oh yeah, yeah,
establishing the expertise. And now you've laid out ways to do that with a core competence that somebody might has, and the importance of the person being known as the influencer, because that's kind of always been that element of it. So
yeah.
um so let's talk about well, we've sort of talked about how lack of visibility impacts raising capital. I mean, I think it's the in the world of equity crowdfunding, right? Where you can be out there, because I'm, reinforcing that you have an offer or your expertise in the ways that you described. Whereas, the nature of an angel investor, traditional angel investor, is that it's a closed door event, it's a closed community.
Yeah,
You're pitching, you're going through an application process to that. Somebody in Chicago looking for a solution that you provide in Atlanta and raising capital there. Like that's the thing I talk about in the angel world. An angel investor in Atlanta that loves a company that, made the cut of the 4 that got to pitch that day, right?
right,
They don't know that there's a company privately pitching to a group in Chicago doing a very similar thing.
right.
And
And so,
unless they, when they go out and they do their traditional Google, or they use their AI tool to go do research, what's going on in this industry, who's leading it, and somebody raising the capital side, somebody is figuring out what you're talking about, and they're showing up as being this expert that's solving a problem, then they'll show up and they'll start, that investor will now compare the company that's more visible to the one they saw the private introduction to.
yeah,
I've long had a model that we use LinkedIn and use articles and things like that and content to gather people within the space to be interested in you and seeing if you can parlay them into being an investor. And this is just a much more crystal clear way of doing it and getting beyond the closed environment of LinkedIn or the closed environment of an angel group.
yeah. So let's put some real numbers to that, Karen, because I think that'll make some impact.
Okay.
And I do have a calculator that I'll be happy to share with you, and you can put in the show notes that people can go and, depending on their industry or a variety of things that it's going to ask you. There's basically 8 questions, and this ties back to the data that was collected. So I mentioned the fact that organic traffic is going to decline by 50% is the projection over the next 3 years. And so there's 3 choices. You can do nothing and your traffic will continue to cause you to be invisible. Um, you can do some things to make your company visible, or you can do some things to make you and the company visible. And so I just want to tell you what those 3 scenarios are. And so let's say that at this point, you're a $25 million company. And maybe you're interested in exiting in 3 years, or maybe you are looking to invest in that company and you're doing some research to know whether this is going to be a good investment or not. And so if you choose that current path of doing nothing, you're making 25 million this year, you're making 22 million next year, you're making 20 million the next year,
Oh,
and you're
wow.
making nine.
This goes directly to the whole valuation exit. That was sort of the original premise of what we were talking about. So thank you for bringing that back.
Year three, 19 million. So your 3-year revenue total is $61.6 million. And I'm looking over because I did some little math here. If you want your brand to be visible and you go, well, I'm still scared of jumping out behind the logo. So you're at 25 million, you drop to 24.9 million next year. Okay, not much. 24.7 million the next year, 24.5 million. So your 3-year total is 74 million. So now you've regained from the 61 million to 74 million. But as you, the owner, CEO, founder, executive, decide to step out and make a difference, let's see what happens. 25 million to 27 million to 28.4 million to 29.8 million. 3-year total of 85.2 million. The gap between doing nothing and having the business and the owner visible is a $23.6 million gap. How much are you willing to invest in making sure that you gain that $23.6 million gap? That's not too hard to do some spreadsheet math pretty
Yeah.
quick.
Okay, that's great. Let's see. We're starting to get towards the end of our time together. So I want to make sure everybody knows that go to thriveagency.com, right? Tell everybody how to reach you, and then can they get that research report and access to your calculator on your website?
They can. So you're right, thriveagency.com. Lots of information on there. You don't have to be a customer to read the information. If we can help you with any of this, be glad to do that. You can set up an appointment. It's real easy to figure out on the website. Or if you prefer, since we've made friends today on this podcast, you can contact me and just DM me through LinkedIn. I publish a lot. I'm not, I'm in that 2% because I want to help people understand what's going on out there. So just DM me. If you have any questions about this, I'll be happy to send you the link. And then, Karen, I'll send you the link so everybody can look at the show notes and get a link to the report. It's free. And then also a link to that calculator where you can put in some numbers and see what the real figures are that could be kind of scary if you are going down this path and are trying to decide, should I do something or should I sit on the fence?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so as we appreciate you sharing that this is going to be really, really powerful. I'm looking forward to when this goes live so people can get access to that. So let's just do a practical sort of wrap up. Somebody's listening to this right now. There's an entrepreneur building a building or an investor evaluating deal. What are the first 2 or 3 things they should do this week to see how they show up? And we talked about, figuring out something that they can, you talk about in 3 different ways that is core to their business model. So not necessarily that, because that's how they're going to
Right.
improve it, but to be able to see beyond, because I'm going to go do this, right? I'm going to go into whether it's, my chat GPT that I work with. I'm starting to explore Claude. One will know me and be have a unfair advantage. The other one won't know me at all. And let's see what they come up with different. So what's the 2 or 3 things that people should do this week to not only figure out where their starting point is, but how to improve their visibility in AI search?
Yeah. And so one thing that you said was interesting. If I go to ChatGPT, it knows me. Claude doesn't know me. We're not really interested in that so much because if you have the signals built in out there, it's going to go out and look for those pizza toppings independent of the
Okay.
large language models. They all have their idiosyncrasies to them, but you want to position yourself to be out there. And so the first thing that I would do is pick 2 or 3 of those that you haven't played around with before. If you're a Microsoft company, you probably have access to Copilot. If you're familiar with Google, Go look at Gemini. Perplexity will give you those links. That's a pretty cool one to go play with. Claude, you mentioned. Grok has got a little bit of snark and attitude to it, which obviously is an offshoot of X and Elon Musk. And then, of course, ChatGPT. And so go ask it who is, and put your first and last name in. Don't put your company, don't do anything. Just say, who is Karen Rands? And see what it comes back with. There may be somebody that has a familiar name to you, but don't put any qualifiers in there. Then go in and say, and again, if you work for a business, say, who is this business? And put in your business name. Then go back, and if you believe you're an expert in this category, say, who is the expert in whatever category? Don't include your name, and see what it comes back with, and
Okay.
see who it references. And then you go, oh, okay, well, I've got some work to do because I want to be as visible as this person. And then if you're in a local market, local, regional, whatever the case may be, say, who is the best business to provide this service in this area? And then put in those qualifiers of whatever the industry that you're in, whatever the service or product that you sell in a geographic region. And that's your baseline. Don't get
Yeah.
discouraged. Don't punch the computer. Just go, hey, it is what it is.
Don't cry.
But then you can do some detective work, and you can go, oh, well, the person that it's identifying as the expert is showing up in these places. They have LinkedIn posts, they have YouTube posts, they have an article written about them. And then you can put together a plan over the next 90 days to start showing up in some areas that will trigger it. And, it's definitely value. You talk about backlinks, it's less is more. The higher quality, the better, right? So think about that as you go through it. So I don't know. Is that helpful?
Yo, yeah, that is gold, man. I was like, who is the expert in this category? Woo! And because I say it all the time. Yeah. And who is the best to provide this service in this area, because I'm going through and doing the hard work of actually going through Kaufman's fast track to create
Mm,
a business plan for this big mission that I have to do. And so you have to do the homework. You can't just, oh, I know who does angel investing education, who does that, right? And I kind of know, right? But you search who does whatever as your competition, but doing this, who is the best to provide this service in this area? That's a different way of asking that question that is much more appropriate. If you really want to know, because yeah, that's so that I mean, that is really awesome, Jimmy. Thank you so much for sharing those gold nuggets here at the end.
I've got one
Anything you
more.
want to Oh,
I've
yeah,
got
yeah,
one
go
more.
ahead. What else?
It's a secret one I haven't shared before.
Uh-oh.
So this is kind of a hack for your audience. Usually people don't put a lot of attention to the about page on their website. That's a
Yeah.
gold mine waiting to happen. And so whoever the key people are in your business, in your company, should have an about page about them. And it's actually called an entity page. And that entity page is basically going to summarize all of the expertise and the places that they've shown up. And so for you, because you've done all these podcast interviews, on your entity page, you will have a description of who you are, what your expertise is, and a link that links out to all the places where your podcast shows up. Where, if you have some certifications, if you belong to an association, list all of those on that entity page, link them out to the profile. So let's say you belong to XYZ association, there might be a listing with your name on that page. Provide that link, link out to your LinkedIn page, all those places. So now what you've done is you've basically created a table of contents of who you are, what you've done, and what you're about. So when these large language models are trying to figure out who you are, there's a home base, and you would just keep adding to that as you gain more of these locations or spots that verify you as who you are and what you're the expert at. And that's something that I think you're going to see more of. Not a lot of people know about that. There is a little piece of code that you need to put on that page. It's
Okay.
a schema markup code that tells what that page is about. And you can look that up. You can ask one of these models to write one for you, and you can have your web developer put that on your page. And then you may have heard a sitemap and a robot.txt file that tells the crawlers how to view your site. There's actually a new file now called an LLMS TXT file, where you're basically going to describe how you want these large language models to navigate your site and what's important for them to know about. And so these are some technical hacks that are sort of hot off the press. And if people want to go deeper into that, I would encourage them to try to learn more about it, or hit me up on LinkedIn, like I said, and I can help point you in the right direction.
Wow, man, that's a titanium nugget. That's a that goes to what I was talking about earlier about like, I guess the markdown language
Yep.
is really this LMS dot text when you just describe that, and the whole that which you the schema
The
pay or
entity page. Yep.
the entity page. I remember a long time ago, I've had people that I guess it was kind of like their blog, and it was just a blurb and a link, a blurb and a link, because I guess when people are like scientists have to have those kind of pays because it's all the places that they
Mm,
have been
published. Yeah.
peer reviewed and things like that, and they're like not good for the eyeball. Like I'm looking at these things going, I'm not reading that page. This is like pages and pages of just whatever. But a machine trying to scan something, it's perfect for that. So yeah, very good. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Wow, what an information power packed human intelligence buzzing my brain interview this was, Jimmy. Thank you so much for being
Yeah, it
on the
was
Competitive
fun.
Capitalist Show. Yeah, so good. Well, make sure everybody go out to Thrive. That's THRIVE agency.com. And of course, and Jimmy is, you should see it in the title or in the thing, but it's Jimi Gibson. And it's interesting when I did just a plain Google on you, right? Because I wanted to see where some of these article things came up. They blend you a lot with Jimi Hendrix and Gibson guitar. So,
That's not a bad thing, but yeah, I've got to work on making sure they understand that I'm neither of those. So
yeah, yeah. So I was like, wait, but it did find your stuff on the first page there, just regular old standard, SEO. So, um, all right, very good. So for as we wrap up here today, everybody, thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this show as much as I did, then you need to go and put a heart on it or a thumbs up or whatever it is on the platform that you look at. Follow so you don't miss these golden nuggets. And as much as I confess, I try to do this every week. Sometimes being a segment creator, a market disruptor, they just don't get out as frequently as and it's on me. So, you want to know when they're coming so you can, so subscribe because they're always really great like this. And the Compassionalist Academy is now live. I am offering free webinars to sort of, is angel investing right for me? What is this thing, angel investing and crowdfund investing? What is all that about? Why is it different from stocks and real estate and all that? So, uh, on a regular basis, will be free webinars for you to sign up and attend those at your leisure or when they're live or when they're on a replay. And you'll be finding those on angelinvesting101.com. So, that's all I got for today. Everybody, thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Jimmy, and onwards and upwards. Okay.